Hi everyone, I'm Chris Conte here with Steve Bland, the CEO of MTA. We are talking about mass transit here in the city of Nashville. Clearly, as we've seen for the last 20 or 25 minutes or so in the past couple of years, this is an incredibly hot topic for the city of Nashville, how people get around, how people get there, how long it takes them to get there, and what the plan is moving forward. Right. We were just talking a little bit a while ago. You were saying that MTA has started to take on some new buses.
I think one of the most interesting technologies coming up is on the Music City Circuit, our downtown, the free downtown circulator. We'll be introducing electric buses over the next couple of months. Just a series of the improvements under Mayor Dean's leadership that we've been able to implement. And what I'd add, Chris, is over the last 10 years, the MTA has been very successful. We've increased ridership by over 66%. The electric buses will be the latest innovation. We're looking forward to the availability of real-time information, passengers knowing exactly when their bus is going to be coming by the end of this year. So quite a series of innovations and improvements.
What does getting electric buses in, what does that do for the system overall? Does it help you save money? Does it help,
yeah, it's obviously a money saver. It's obviously it reduces emissions in the city. It's a vehicle that runs quieter. It's a very smooth running vehicle. I think it'll be a very noticeable vehicle. Yeah. It's a smaller vehicle than what we typically run on the circuit, perimeter seating. So it's really trying to set up the circuit as kind of that Nashville community and that welcoming environment that we want to extend.
And you talk about the quietness of it. I have some friends that live just over by the main terminal downtown, and you never really realize how loud it can be with just a handful of buses sitting idle. I mean, not even moving, sitting there in the the middle of the day or the middle of the evening, maybe when it's a little quieter downtown. And so, an electric bus might actually be a welcome thing for a lot of people downtown.
Actually, one of the things we worry about is that they're so quiet. We want to make sure people are looking out for them.
Yeah. Interesting. I believe we have Greg on line 2. Greg, are you still there?
Yeah. I called earlier. I'm glad you were able to let me kind of follow up on it.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
The other caller that called after me was saying about expanding our freeways and adding more lanes. A real easy fix is, I don't know how many millions of dollars did this state just spend on repainting the carpool lane and putting all these new carpool signs up. You just take all that stuff right down, and we've got ourselves a whole lane that we could all go to work in easily without worrying about getting a ticket or any of that kind of stuff. There's a fix right off the bat that could be done this week. But before this week is over, you could start taking all them signs down and open that carpool lane up, and there's a whole lane for us all to be using.
Yeah.
The other lady talking about the 70 miles an hour down to 55, well, all those people that slowed down to 55, since they had to slow down to 55, they weren't able to get to work. So that's what caused the backup, because everybody starts to back up when you have to slow down. So maybe instead of slowing down to 55, maybe slow down to 60 or 65. And that's what's going to keep the traffic flowing. And then when you do get off the freeway and you hit that red light, these lights need to be programmed to turn green. Not when you hit one red light, the very next light turns red on you, because that causes a backup.
Yeah, I'll give Greg that point there. I travel Charlotte every day, back and forth from Channel 5 here to where I live in West End. And I know this is, we're jumping out of the realm of MTA and buses here, but,
I'm not a train traffic engineer, I just play one on TV.
But, and I've had conversations with the guys over at Metro, about the lights. And, they do try to sync these lights up so that you can kind of get through them, but sometimes they come out of sync, or maybe, they're not paying attention, or there's so many people moving in so quickly to some of these spots that they're not, maybe the lights were set for a, amount of cars or buses to get through in a wave, and now there's so many more people using those same roads and those same lanes of traffic that it screws up the whole pattern.
And I think what Greg really highlights is it's going to take a range of solutions. There's not going to be one answer. There's not going to be one project. Technology is going to be huge. They're doing things now with what they call adaptive signaling that really can look at the context. We're putting in satellite-based communication in all our vehicles, so the same type of technology that will tell you exactly exactly when your bus is going to get to your stop, is also feeding us information about where are we losing time on a route, you know, where are those jam ups, and how do we work with folks like Metro Public Works or TDOT or the surrounding cities and counties, you know, to improve that flow. The pedestrian access, I know that's something I hear about all the time when I'm around the city. How do we make it easier to walk places so that maybe we don't, if you're going to do a half-mile errand in your neighborhood, that you don't have to get in your car.
Right, and that's another interesting point too. You know, you probably have noticed this coming from New York. It's, you know, maybe there are bus stops for people to get to, but there's no safe way for them maybe to get to that bus stop. Maybe you know, the sidewalk isn't there, or they're forced to walk in a busy lane of traffic, and you know, I think that's something this next mayor is certain, and both of these candidates have been talking about this too. I've heard them say specifically things about sidewalks, because that it all ties together. I mean, it all comes together. It was
interesting when we've done the upfront engagement and talking to the public about the system and what they want to see out of the transit system. Safety came up more often than I expected, and I was concerned. Well, what, are you afraid you're going to get an accident? You're afraid about crime on the bus? Really, what people were talking about was exactly what you're bringing up, Chris. It's okay, I have great service in my neighborhood. I know how to use it. I'm afraid to cross, especially the Pikes, the Gallatin roads, the Murfreesboro roads, to get to it.
And how many times do you hear every day here on, you know, News Channel 5, someone has been hit trying to cross one of those major thoroughfares or one of those interstate, you know, early in the morning or later in the evening, or I mean, it just every week it happens.
I think, coming back to some of the earlier points that the callers have made, it's not about transit versus cars or pedestrians versus cars or bicycles versus transit. It's trying to find the right mix so that the most of us as possible can get around the region as effectively and efficiently and quickly as we can.
Yeah. I believe we have Allison, who has called in online too. Again, if you'd like to join in the conversation, 615-737+. Allison, where are you calling from?
Yes, Antioch.
Antioch, okay. And what's your question or your comment?
Well, really, it was more of a comment. It had to do with, you know, the mass transit, which I used to use when I worked at the state here a few years ago before I retired. But also, what I'm interested in is making a comment about is that Nashville is becoming one of the endpoints of a huge urban area that goes from, a megapolis. It goes from Nashville to Atlanta, and if you've driven that route, there's not much country in there. So it's coming. So mass transit is going to necessarily be the only way to go, and especially when you have it's a major national kind of trade-off points for different interstates. Actually, it's coming. It's megapolis doesn't just get stopped. It's coming.
Yeah. So, Steve, what do you say to that? I mean, we're getting all these people in here. Is there any other choice, really, besides trying to figure out some kind of mass transit plan?
Well, there are tons of choices, and that's really, I think, for the next mayor and really all of community leadership surrounding counties, it's going to be how do we make choices now that our children and our grandchildren will benefit from. Nothing we do will likely have instant success. It's building for the long term and making sure that everything complements each other. There's not a transit solution, there's not a roadway solution, there's not a bicycle solution. It's trying to figure out how they can all work together based on where it is we want to live, where it is we want to work, where it is we want to play, to enhance and continue to maintain our quality of life.
I know no one could have predicted the exponential growth that we've been seeing lately, you know, the last couple of years. But do you think that sitting where we're sitting now and kind of seeing where, you know, how many tough choices we're having to make with a lot of this stuff, did we do a poor job of planning up to this point, of trying to get ourselves, you know, of getting us to where we are today? Could we have done a better job of maybe, you know, being more proactive about some of this stuff?
Well, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, and I think any city or region, even the ones you'd say have dealt with it pretty well, would say there are things we would have done differently. I really think the key is looking from here on forward and what we want our region to become, what region we want our kids to inherit. We talked earlier about, you know, consistently people have said, we don't want to become Atlanta. You know, my worst fear is with the growth that's coming, in 30 years, somebody takes a job like mine in Atlanta and they're asking the same question, and people down there are saying, we don't want to become like Nashville. And I think right now is the time, you know, particularly we're seeing leadership transition throughout the region, to really take a breath, look at what we want our community to be, and figure out the right mix of solutions. Not saying it's a transit answer, it's a highway answer. What's the right mix?
We had someone call in last week when we were talking about affordable housing, and she said, you know, everyone calls this the IT city, but I think it's now the city that rhymes with it. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there that are disgruntled with maybe the way the city is growing, how quickly it's growing.
Sure.
And, you know, change is tough, and this is part of change.
And that's what I see when I started, and we were sort of in the midst of the AMP debate. You know, some of the controversy was over the specific project. Frankly, a lot of the frustration that I heard was, hey, this isn't the Nashville that I grew up in, and you know, what do we do with that? And frankly, I think the goal of all these processes should be, how do we preserve that quality of life with an influx of new people? I
believe we have Michael on line 4. Michael, where are you calling from?
Nashville.
From Nashville. What part of Nashville?
Donaldson.
Donaldson. Okay, go ahead with your question, your comment.
Donaldson.
Donaldson. Okay.
The question is whether or not we could actually use Access Ride. In other words, I have a senior that is in nursing home, and from time to time we have to transport her from place to place. And because y'all have wheelchair access, you know, it's called, whether or not we could actually use Access Ride as long as somebody went with her.
Okay, Steve,
go ahead. I'm really glad about this question, because when we talk about congestion, all these huge issues, one of the things that's often overlooked is the Access Ride system. Largest door-to-door system, predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly senior citizens, persons with disabilities, really opens up that mobility opportunity. The direct answer to your question is absolutely. It's a county-wide service. It's available during the same hours that our regular bus service is available. So we would definitely encourage you to get a hold of our office, get your family registered, you know, and start taking advantage of that service.
Okay, Michael, we hope that that helped answer your question there. I believe we have another caller on line 3. Caller, what's your name?
It's Bob.
Hey, Bob. And what's your comment or your concern?
You know, I like the city line. There's rails around Nashville everywhere. They just need to be updated. I live in like West Nashville. You go down Charlotte, you know, you see lots of expanses of land that can be used for parking or et cetera for that. And expand the bus lines. And the only other thing is, even if just Nashville does it, we need a toll booth thing or something like that. Because like with the Medicaid, we haven't accepted the money and it goes somewhere else. It's starting to domino effect with the transportation industry as far as the money's there and a few other things. And the developers are just kind of taking over all the land. That's going to drive the prices up on anything the transportation is going to try and do.
Yeah. Right. So I guess the question is, do you guys have the space? I mean, do you have the means to do what you want to do or what you need to do right now?
Well, clearly we're going to have to work closely with folks like TDOT, with the cities, with entities like, as was brought up, CSX and the other railroads, about looking at what all those corridors look like. And I'm glad he raised the point, because with a lot of good ideas like that, I do want to point out to any of the viewers that get on our website for our current planning process, nmotion2015.org, and participate in giving us your ideas and giving feedback on the plans that we have posted, because we're not in a position where we can afford to eliminate any option just immediately.
Every idea is on the table.
Every idea is on the table.
We again are going to continue taking your calls here on OpenLine. Our number is 615-737+, 615-737+. We hope that you will join in here on this spirited conversation about mass transit, and we will be right back after this quick break.